Perfect. So how's everybody doing this morning and tonight?
Very good.
Great.
I
All right.
only heard your, your episode 41.
You
Yeah.
did or you didn't?
Yeah,
She did.
Okay, great.
I did so.
Great.
What did you
And
think
what
of
do you
it?
think?
Well, I think it's very good. Yeah, because that's what we all go through. Because we get confused. Is it the past? Is it the future? Is it now? So everybody is talking now, especially with Eckhart Tolle is talking about the moment of now.
Mm-hmm.
And to really understand about the moment of now and to give more clarity, it's will be good for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from what I understand you from what you're saying, I hope I'm not, I'm still learning that we can be in the different realities depending on where we put ourselves. It could be the past, the future, and the now. I like to hear more about it, that we can move from each realm of reality, yeah, depending on the. But of course, the way past of the reality is not something we want to go into because we have already forgotten. Yeah.
Well, that's true, but the unfortunate fact is, very many of us do go into that past and stay there,
Yeah.
and they create that almost kind of a time loop in their mind. The past did this, and this happened in the past, and this happened in the past, and they just won't let it go, and so they're constantly
Yeah.
reliving that past over and over and over and over again. And many or most of it is all going to be some sort of an emotional event that they just can't let go of, or they have difficulty letting go of. And in many cases, they need guidance to get out of that. And if you look at PTSD that soldiers suffer from, that's where they're just caught. They just can't let go because it was so traumatic.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things to that. When you understand, I mean, the interplay with our mind and perception of time, there's so many variables on that. I mean, I don't know, Ross, do you know or remember about the experiment that Eagleman did when he dropped people like 150
Yeah.
feet and was kind of timing some things, right? From what I remember from the experiment, I think the idea was he wanted or they wanted to test if in times of stress or fear, if our perception of time was altered. So
Correct.
if you don't know the experiment, so what happened was he took people and he dropped them 150 feet. They did have harnesses and they did land in the net, so it wasn't off a cliff, which may have had something to do with it. I don't know.
He went through a lot of subjects. I don't know why.
He kept running out. So maybe the safety of having those things had something to do with it. Who knows? But I mean, when you're falling 150 feet, harness or not, you still feel like you're falling 150 feet. And and while they were falling, he asked them he had them observing some flashing numbers, right? And the flashing numbers were flashing faster than would normally be read if they were in normal circumstances, right? And and was kind of, seeing, okay, by the end of it, were they able to perceive those numbers that were flashing, because of that situation? Well, it worked out that that didn't have any impact. So they didn't really have an increase in their ability to see things because of that. So what that showed was that in scary times, we actually do not stretch time to perceive smaller amounts of it. But the interesting thing was that they did find that when asked how long after the fall, how long the fall was, so now the duration of the fall, they said, okay, well, they had two questions. One was by observing someone else, how long was their fall? And the other one was by being in the fall, how long do you think it was?
Right.
And the interesting thing was when they observed someone else falling, it was a shorter time frame. Right? So they thought it was less than what it actually was. But when they had the memory of their own fall, it was actually longer than it was. So their perception in their memory of it was actually skewed.
Correct.
Right?
So, and part of the basis of this was the interviews that he did with a lot of first responders.
Yeah.
And I believe it was mostly firefighters, but it was firefighters that fought forest fires, because they're just in the fire.
Yeah.
They're entrenched, and their perception and their memory of these events, they would say that it seemed like everything just slowed down.
Yeah.
And it was their brain giving them, well, by their perception slowing down, he's saying their brain is actually speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
So that it can give them the ability to save themselves. So the brain speeds up. So you need to do this, and this, but their perception of that is that everything was just moving very, very slow, just like you would see in the movies and such. And they just they felt like they had all the time in the world, for the lack of a better term, to get themselves prepared to, get the equipment out, or the fire blankets, and get themselves into safety in one way or another. And almost every single one of them virtually had this same version of this story, because they're talked to, interviewed separately, and they're just like, it just seemed like everything just slowed down, and I had all the time I needed to get this stuff taken care of. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, David Eagleman is a very renowned neuroscientist, and his specialty that he focuses on, at least years ago, was people's perception of time.
Yeah.
And not that they were, and so when they're doing the drop, you got a camera and you've got people, and everything is being counted. And then I believe on one of them, the participant, as they're falling, are supposed to count.
Oh, okay.
I believe that was one of them. But again, he's just like what you just said earlier, Gary, is that he goes, because they really knew that they really weren't in danger, it kind of skews the program, because that's what he really believes, is that the
something kicks in
adrenaline,
when you know it's real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, if you had done it, they're at the top, and he's like, yeah, we almost got your harness on, and then pushes them,
Exactly. That'd
like
be a different
that,
story. Yeah.
but you can only get away with that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that perception, though, he believes that it's an instinct, and again, it's just a survival instinct.
Yeah. But I think that if you look at other studies too, though, they say that the reason, as we grow older, the reason that time can seem to fly by is because we become familiar with certain things, so our brain doesn't have to process as much, right? Like, you know, but when there's novelty, it slows down because it has to process what's new. And I'm thinking that when they're in those situations, there's so much novelty going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
You know, because and that's why when we're kids, everything seems like forever because it's novel, right? Our brain is taking the time to process that stuff. And so time seems to slow down. Summertime seems, you know, our summer break seems forever, but then as we grow, it shrinks. And it's like, oh my God, where'd that month, where'd that half year go? Where'd that whole year, where'd that decade go?
Right.
You know, because we get into these routines of doing things, and our brain doesn't have to process as much, right? And so it's like, you know, is it because of the fear? Is it because of the novelty of things? Is it, you know, what are the pieces that make that shift? And, you know, when it comes to time, we don't really have at least as far as we know, we don't have an organ to sense time, right? We have an organ to sense this, we have an organ to sense that, we have an organ. I mean, we have these organs to sense the senses that we've labeled as senses, but we don't have one that we know of. So we kind of rely on, you know, circadian rhythms, right? The patterns of day and night. We have biological cues where, you know, if you get hungry or tired, I mean, those are cues that we use to kind of sense time, right? So, I mean, time is such there's so many different aspects. There was even, there was I saw it on TikTok and then I did see it on YouTube as well. There was, and I don't know if there was other variations of this or not, but for the English language, right? It was, there was a TikTok where a guy said, well, what time is the meeting? And here's the quote that he said, right? Tell what time the meeting, something like this. What time is the meeting? And the languaging that was used was, Wednesday's noon meeting has been moved forward by 2 hours. Let me say it again. Wednesday's noon meeting has been moved forward by 2 hours. And then the question was, so what time is the meeting? What time? What time do you think it would be? Tell me, if Wednesday's noon meeting was moved forward by 2 hours, what time would you think the meeting would be?
For 2 p.m.
Okay.
And I'll say the opposite. I'll say 10 a.m.
What about you, Ross?
I knew where you were going there.
Oh, you did?
I would say 10 a.m.
You do 10 as well?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't know. I didn't figure you for 10. That's cool. Interesting. So the idea is that I mean, it's the same wording, right? But in the English language, it because of the way that it's done, our perception of what we think time is shifts or alters. And what they found was it's split down the middle, right? It's 50%, approximately 50% do 10 a.m., 50% think 2 a.m., right? I'm in the 2 a.m. bracket too. Sorry, 2 p.m., right? And it's because our perception of time, we perceive times in a couple of ways as humans. One is they call it ego moving perception of time. Ego moving perception of time is where, remember we talked about timeline on the stream, right? If we create our timeline, wherever our timeline is, past, present, future, right? Ego movement of time means that you are moving forward through time. So that's the 2 p.m., right? So we see ourselves moving through time. 10 a.m. is called time moving perception, which means that you're stagnant and time is moving through you. And that's the way you perceive time, right? So it's so bizarre, and it's also circumstantial too. There's certain situations where it'll shift because that's the way you need to function and whatnot. You know, and when I mean, there's so many things that we can get into because, you know, I talked a little bit about neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy and that kind of stuff too. it's just such a I mean, it's rabbit hole beyond rabbit hole. I mean, it's
But you hit on a good point, though, is it's when you're talking about, that's everyone's perception who English is their primary language.
Mhm.
They discovered this tribe, I believe it was in South Africa, not Africa, South America, that they have no words in their vocabulary for time. So the word tomorrow does not exist. The word yesterday does not exist. They just,
I love that. I
for
think that's
them,
fascinating.
there's no need to keep track of time.
Yeah, I love that.
Our languages, or many languages, modern languages, are designed to keep track of time
Yeah.
because of the world and the society that we've created using that language. But in their case, when they're talking about the past, they'll talk about something that was done when we did this.
Mm.
So it was an event
Yeah.
of the past that would make them, so they would know. It's like, well, when we built the red house, that happened when we built the red house.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that happened a month ago.
Yeah. Which, they're using a concept that we use anyways, which is, that they're using memories as landmarks in time.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Because for us, it's that way too, but we have a languaging that kind of has taken it even beyond that. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the future, the way they spoke of the future was when we build the red house.
Interesting. Future.
But it was not attached to a segment of time. It was not attached to a day, because I'm not even sure they actually had days or weeks in this. It was a while that I read that. But it was always an event that either happened or that is planned somehow, planning to happen. When we build the red house, this is when we will do that.
Interesting.
But there was no specific words for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, tomorrow, the future. Any of those words were simply not in their vocabulary.
Very
It's just like the Japanese. I mean, it's not related to time. Like in Okinawa, why they live a very long life, they don't have such a word as retirement. There is no retirement in their vocabulary. So they continue to move their body, they continue to work,
Right.
and they continue to celebrate small celebrations. That's why they live a very long life, a simple, happy, long life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no such word as retirement. Whereas we created a lot of words that defined ourselves.
Yeah.
At this age, you retire. At this age, you are supposed to be down here going to die. And we change all that because all these definitions, the HO believes definition, it's very belittling you. And it's from long years ago. It's not now. I think we need to create new vocabulary or take away some of this vocabulary, which is very, very belittling. I mean, it sort of squeeze you down to the HO belief that, 55, you must retire. Oh, by 65, you're almost down you're going downwards, but it is all not true, because I think the people of today are going to live very long life. I mean, to live to 100 will be very common soon.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. 120 is going to be common pretty soon. Yeah.
100 will become common, 100 will become, I think all of us will live to 100 at least minimum. And not only just live to 100, but to be well, to be good, to be functioning, and all of it. So it will extend, yeah. So the vocabulary, that's why I love the words that you say, words, definition. All these words and definition has to be redefined again.
Again, back to definitions, exactly.
Yeah, yes. That's why those I begin to find so much value in what you are taught during the 7 days act. Was that about these words definition, it means so much. Now I'm beginning to understand. So when now I read about Ikigai, about when you were talking about definition, they don't have a word of retirement. So they never really retire. They just
right.
continue working, even though they don't have a proper job, but they go to the garden, they do the vegetables, they still continue to fish. You give me fish, I give you vegetables, yeah? And
Mhm.
things like that.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
imagine, I mean, taking that use as an example, imagine if you took the definition of the word retirement and you change that definition to set free or the beginning. This is the beginning of your life.
true.
What
True.
your body
You
would
see,
perceive that.
you know something, when we move on, when the children are grown and everything else, and we have a bit more time to ourselves, where we are not just running around like crazy,
Mhm.
we have more time. You're right, set free. You are actually more set free to have more time to redefine your life, your movement, and where you're going. I
Yeah.
think that's the beginning of setting free. So we should say 60 years old is the beginning of setting free,
Exactly.
yeah, rather than retirement, yeah.
There was a
Because
I was
retirement at 55 years old. 55 years old is so young, yeah. And
Yeah.
Sweden, I think, is 65 years old. I mean, so what you say is just true. You hit it. Instead of retirement, set free. You are more free to pursue so many things. True.
Mhm. I was listening to a video earlier this morning, and actually it's funny that we fell upon this subject because it was specifically about aging, and where they have looked at some of these people around the world, and who have you know um, are like 120, 130, and they look like they're in their 60s, and they're like, well, then the first thing we do is like, what are they eating? Are they taking certain vitamins? What are they doing? And they're like, no, I'm living like everyone else. However, what they said is, what is the most important thing to you, and why do you feel that you have lived as long? When they set their priority, they say, what's the most important thing? One would say, my family, my love for my family. And then another one would say that I live a life of forgiveness. And and it was, everything was these heart-centered emotions was their priority in life. And the idea is that what this is doing is it's creating a different type of chemistry within their bodies, and their bodies just are not breaking down. And obviously they're staying active and moving, and they probably don't know what the word retirement means.
Well, they're creating novelty, right? They're creating
Correct.
novelty in the day. They're not going into routines, and I think that's where the North American, for sure, definition of retirement is: you stop doing things that create novelty, and you go into this cycle, this routine, the boredomness of day in, day out, and it just becomes this set sequence of things. And so therefore the brain doesn't have this this daily experience of expansion or growing, and its elasticity starts to stop, right? It's supposed to slow down, and so therefore it's again, it's definitely in the definition of what you think. I mean, and then there's other people who think retirement, it is freedom for them, even though the word is retirement, and it's like, hey, I get to experience the life now. And they're traveling, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And they have this life vigor because they're experiencing so much more new things, right? So yeah, time is such a cool
for you to live a longer life after retirement. I mean, not say retirement, but when you have a time when the children are grown and you have more time for yourself, I think it's also to continue to find purpose in life. We must continue to find purpose in life. Like both of you, Gary and Ross, your purpose is to educate, to teach. And in fact, both of you should co-write a book on, after 65, since your retirement age is 65, what do? You're reborn, as you say, you feel free. This is a new way of writing. I think it's very good. You should write a book on the new definition. New definition of what is retirement. There's no such word as retirement. But when you reach this age when things are more settled, children are already grown up, they are on their way and things like that, and you have more time. So you redefine. I think that's a beautiful book if you could write it out, and when we look at things that way, and we begin to have purpose, you must still continue to have purpose to do something, whether it is for social work or whether it is
Oh,
for
absolutely.
education. Because if you just, you can travel, but after the travel, so after a while of traveling, because before the lockdown, almost every month I was traveling because of my work. But
Yeah.
after I travel for a long time, it's just another place. So no doubt it opens up your eyes, it opens up your perspective, it opens up so many things. But if you are not having work, well, because I have work, if you don't have work, you're just seeing another building, another nice nature, another nice this. But even in terms of your traveling, there must be some purpose that you're doing something that make the place more alive. The people become more alive. The colors become more alive because you can relate it to doing certain things for your creative work or for your whatever work you are doing, whether you're an artist, you're a writer, or you're a painter, or you are a business person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Exactly.
think
If you,
from
I'd love to throw a little unique spin on that too. I'm a recovered TBI person, and I say recovered because I hate to use the word victim.
Mm.
And I try to help other people now. It's so immediately, with the accident, I've got 2 years of my life that were just kind of, I've got 3 to 6 months I just don't remember. And the whole concept of time, numbers, I was a little bit of a math and time savant before that. I lost all of that.
Mm.
And so now I find I have to track my time by major milestone events, which is really problematic for somebody as a business person who is in project management. You live by times and tasks. And I'm
Right.
finding it really changed my perspective.
Mm.
So I really try and help and coach a lot of other kind of TBI survivors and say, you've got to let go of your concept of time and your concept of what your life was going to be and start living more for the moment. Find calmful, like mindfulness type activities,
Right.
find your passion and center within. And that's why I love these sessions. And I love that last one about time. I don't know if you guys remember, I was the one that had that concept of, I kept feeling that time like right deep in my heart.
Yeah.
And the future and present for me really kind of are sitting almost in the same spot.
Yeah. And because of that, that shifts your interplay with time, right? So
Yes.
when maybe prior to your circumstances there, you laid time out, your timeline was laid out differently, right? And then something happens, and this happens a lot of times in all kind, when people go through different challenging and even enlightening type situations, where because of that situation, you realign and realter your experience and your play with time, right? So your timeline gets shifted, and that can really sometimes mess someone up, and sometimes it can really put them on the right path.
Right.
Very much so. I really resonate with that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And so the because again, our unconscious mind, its prime directive above all else is survival.
Correct.
Right? Everything else is secondary. And so if it feels that in order to survive what you're going through, it needs to make shifts and adjustments, it will make them like that. Right? So the idea that it takes time to change or that's BS. If it's important enough, your unconscious mind will do it like that. It's just a matter of making it important enough for the things that you want to change, right? And so when that happens and it throws you off tilt, the ecological way to do it, the safest way to do it, is to do exercises like I did the hack. You experiment with playing with that time. Okay, so now maybe they're both so close, maybe they're like this. What if I took that perception of now and kept it here and put future there so I can observe it and play with that to see how I function and how I can deal and handle that, and if that's a better option, right? and in timeline therapy, that's essentially what we do, is we kind of check and say, okay, well, where do you spatially hold an experience, whether it's a memory or something you expect, future memory or past memory. I call a future memory something you expect to happen, right? Where do you spatially hold that? And then if we were to take that, so for example, if I had a negative memory of something and I was stored it, if I thought about negative memory was right here, right? Then if I took just through the mental process of saying, okay, now if we take that mental memory and we shifted it to this side and thought of it being there, just physiologically, I can feel just that right there. I can physiologically feel there's been a shift. Right? Now, whether I keep it there or not is dependent on a variety of things, but it allows you to know that you have control over those things.
Thank you for that. Yeah, after that session, I started playing with that a little bit because I'm struggling a little bit with quite a few. I've had multiple car accidents, 2 significant ones, and I didn't realize the trauma I was still holding and not releasing. And I think that's my last bit that I really need to, and it's almost like layers of healing.
Yeah.
And this whole concept of the time therapy, I'm loving it because I'm really loving how it's helping me play with that. Say, okay, what do I have to deal with today? So every morning now I'm sitting and I'm spending, my few minutes of meditation. And at the end, I'm starting to play with this time therapy. So I want to thank you for this. I'm loving this idea.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just one variable. One variable is where it is on your timeline. You can do things like when you think of a negative memory or those things that are impacting you in a less than positive way, you can not only change location, you can kind of throw it up there, you can throw it up there, you can try and all these different, you can take it from here and put it to where the door is and notice that difference.
Yeah.
And what alters, you can take it and you can do the reverse image of it. So you know how you're talking about your camera? If you do that to your memory, it's like, oh.
And I'm going to start sending a few more people this way too. I'm part of a traumatic brain injury group. And a couple times I'll reach out to some folks who are really struggling with, I'm not progressing fast enough. And I said, well, says who?
Yeah.
You've got a conception of, you're trying to be the person you were before. Now you need to change that perception. So I'm finding this really powerful from that perspective of not just helping me, of trying to, when I'm in a good state, I do try and step out and help a lot of folks in this group as much as I can. And sometimes I have to step back for my own healing.
Yeah.
And I'm loving this whole time and timeline therapy as part of that. It's been powerful. So thank you kudos to that last session. And thank you to both of you for that. I find it really powerful, and it's something I hadn't played with yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of what Ross and I put together for the Infinity Process that we teach in the 7-day program that we teach. It stems from what we call change technologies that have kind of really figured out the code for how we process things. And neurolinguistic programming being one of them, time therapy being another one, EFT being another. I mean, all these things that we blended into this program so that you can start to hack the matrix and start to create the reality that you want and design the reality in an artful way, right? And so you're getting snippets of it in each of the streams we do. We're just giving just one element and expanding on it because, so here's another cool thing you can do, right? So when you perceive a memory of something that's not positive, or even something that is positive, imagine that you had a remote control, and when you remember that thing, that you slow it down to 1 frame at a time. That'll blow your mind, right? Because
I've inadvertently been doing this in the last week or two.
Nice.
Things I thought that were, and I didn't realize until I watched your show, that episode, things that I thought were long dealt with trauma. I live in Ontario, Canada, and we literally just had a tornado hit. It's 10 minutes away, and I grew up in the really big tornado in that same city 30 years ago.
Wow.
I did not realize. Yeah, I'm up in Barrie. I did not realize the impact of that trauma that I was still holding on to. So this therapy came in so handy over the last 24 hours. And I was running out and like checking in on all my friends, dropping off blankets, waters, and saying, you know, does anybody need help? But the emotional upheaval that brought back of something I thought was long buried.
Mhm.
So this is, and I love the concept that, sorry, is it Jean that you brought up about the concept of retirement now and living in the now and finding a purpose and passion? Because that's something I've been playing with too. So
What's the
I'm finding
difference?
it's all entangled. It's all entangled.
It really is. And, you know, and going back to what Gary
Everything's
said
connected.
is, you know, where you have to, you know, if you want to make the change, you know, for the subconscious mind to make that change, something, it has to be bribed. You know, it's just like, here, this is more important. This is something that's more important, and then let it go. Oh, that is more important. Yes, I'm going to make that the priority now. And this is gonna, and we're gonna take this and we're gonna put it back here.
Hey, Maria.
Dull its color. We're gonna make it
Hi, everyone.
just a shadow of what it was, because this is now going to be the priority.
Yeah.
And it's huge. I'll give you an example. Is years ago, my wife used to be terrified of flying. I mean, absolutely so terrified that she was, you know, partially sedated, and to where, you know, just so that she could walk onto the plane, for that matter. And it made traveling interesting. And we went through this for years and years and years and years. And then one day, she was starting a new profession, and she came to me and says, I'm going to go to this training program on this particular date. And at that time I was traveling a lot, and I'm like, I said, you can't. I said, because I'm already out of town. I said, I said, I can't change my plans. I said, no, you can't go, because I had a different perception. And she goes, no, she goes, I'm going to go without you. And I'm just like, you know, 1,000 scenarios flash through my mind. I'm like, no, 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 no. I said, you're going to get on the wrong plane. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And she goes, no, no. She goes, I'm going to be fine. And I'm like, you know, you can't take anything when you go. Because you're, you know, I mean, she's out of it. And she goes, no, I'm fine. And I'm, you know, I'm standing there struggling with this, but there was just this different demeanor that she had. And I'm like, you really want to do this? She goes, yeah. She goes, this is very important to me.
I love that.
And I'm like, okay, let's make this happen. And you know, so the day came, and so I'm in another city now, and she's back and forth on the phone and texting me and such like that. She goes, okay, I'm at the airport. Okay, I'm walking down the concourse, you know, and literally I'm getting a play-by-play. I'm on the plane, and I'm the fact that she was just on the plane blew my mind, because there was a time when prior to that, when we were walking down the concourse, because and our planes had all been delayed, and just like that, her medication wore off. And all of a sudden, I'm just being jerked back as she's like, no, 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 I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And so she's already on the plane. I'm like, how did she get on the plane? I mean, and she took off, she landed, she did her thing, she got back on the plane, she came home, and we haven't looked back since. And the point is that she found something that was more important, that was bigger than her fear. And I've used this example, Gary's probably heard this story, I don't know how many times. I've used this example over and over and over again, because that's exactly what Gary says. You have to find something that's bigger than the previous event, something that's more important to you. And then just let your subconscious mind just start to rearrange things. Like, yeah, I'm gonna put this at the priority now, because this is it. This other thing, I already prove that this is no kind of a non-event, and it just goes away. It just fades away. she doesn't even have twinges now. I mean, she flies by herself all the time. And it's just the subconscious mind just rearranged everything. It's amazing. So if you take that same concept and you put it just in your life as your life purpose, it will take the place of virtually anything and any other belief that you have. I don't feel old. My body is not decrepit. I'm going to live for, this many years, okay, well, no, the average person, I don't care about average. So don't put those limitations on
So
me.
interesting thing though. So I mean, Gene talked a little earlier about life expectation being 100 and change, and it's already. I mean, there's already way more centurions than we've ever had in the history of recorded age, right?
Mhm.
So 120 is definitely within our timeline as far as
Sure.
as realistic to live to. When I was between,
But hopefully,
say again?
hopefully without medicaments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
pills. I don't need pills with.
Yeah,
Yes.
without pill popping, yes. But I remember when I was in my 20s, right? That I would say that, oh yeah, I in my gut know that I'm going to live to 20 years old.
Mhm.
That's 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
Right? That I'm thinking 120. Nobody, and back then nobody would think. I mean, 80 was a pretty high number for
Stretch.
people.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm part of a writers group. I got into writing again as part of my therapy and recovery, and I kind of fell away again every time I have these little hurdles. But all of a sudden, I'm kind of invigorated, joined back in.
Cool.
A woman published a wonderful post, and she just said, she goes, stop thinking of age as a limiting factor. She goes, I just published my first book. I'm 74.
Yes.
I don't feel it. She goes, and I'm only sharing that so that you guys can still stay motivated and don't think that just because I'm 40, just because I'm 50, just because so her post was so well written, and she goes, and everybody, the response was phenomenal, because there's a lot of us at this age group, in our 40s and 50s who are exploring this. So I think that's fantastic. That whole mindset, like we are so caught up on our age and what's supposed to be, our timeline of that age. I love the fact that, you're thinking, I'm going to live to 120 without having any.
And it was just, for me, it was like, yeah, I couldn't see myself being less than that. I couldn't. And it's, and people would ask and, well, how do you think that's possible? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't feel that I'm going to be here any less than that. I got too much to do.
That's great. That's an awesome way of thinking of it.
Yeah. And so with that said, I am running out of time today. I have a date with my daughter we're having a day to just hang out because she's graduated, and I'm just kind of spending the day with her. So I got to head out. Julie, hit me up on Messenger. I have some things I can share with you with the trauma stuff.
I'd love that. Thank you. I'm doing phenomenally, but I'm constantly exploring, learning more, and I love anything you could share.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the group as well, because Russ and I are open for even coming in and just kind of doing something just for them if it fits.
Yeah,
and if it fits.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this already in the past of doing, some trauma work, and it's powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, again, every once in a while I've had to step away. It's an online group, but they do some online video groups as well, like online video chats.
Mhm.
And I reach out to some people one-on-one when they're seeming to really struggle. So, because I try to let them know, I said, just because you're not where you thought you'd be, it doesn't mean you're not in a good place. And a lot of people struggle with that concept.
Exactly.
So every once in a while I kind of throw myself into it, really help, and then I need to take a step back for my own peace of mind, because I get so engaged and I feel their pain.
Right.
But yeah, I really would appreciate that. Thank you, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, so just private message me, and then we'll
Okay.
on Messenger, and we'll
Yeah, Gary's going to pop off, but we're going to continue on. So,
well, everyone, thanks for joining in. We'll see you on the next stream.
all right.
Enjoy
Gary,
it.
talk to you later.
Bye.
Have fun with Miley.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh.
All right, there we go. So, Yeah, so one of the things to think about is when we go into definitions and we go into languaging,
Yeah.
and we'll still continue to talk about the fact of aging and such, is that um, the much of the languaging that we use these days is a very limiting type of language as when it comes to getting older. You know, whereas we're saying, I mean, one that pops into mind is someone who says act your age. You know, it's like, well, how about I act what I'm feeling? You know, and who made the chart? You know, whose perception or expectation am I supposed to live up to? Because I didn't get the manual, I didn't get that email. And Julie, that kind of comes to where, you know, when you're talking about some of your friends who are having difficulties, you know, trying to come out of their trauma, because they have a predetermined expectation that somebody put upon them. And so many of us live with those expectations, and it's one of the biggest causes of stress. I should be here by now. I should be done by this by now. And I should, you know, and we have this, we just have this predetermined goal. Well, where did that come from? You know, when somebody is talking about this should be done by now. Okay, who said? Who put that limitation on in your head? Well, I wanted to be done by now. Okay, all right. Now we're defining it. And what did you use to determine that time frame? What was it that, you know, well, I just arbitrarily picked it out. Well, then maybe you were just arbitrarily wrong, you know, with that particular expectation. Or what are you using to measure that expectation? And when we're talking about getting older, it's like, what are you using to determine that? There was this study that they did when they were asking people, how long do you want to live? And a lot of those people were saying, oh, probably no more than 80. Oh, okay. There wasn't a lot of people that wanted to go to 90 to 100 to 120. But here's the caveat with that. When they went further and said, okay, let's change the question. If you could remain in the same physical health, in the same physical quality of life that you're living now, how long would you want to live? And about 30% of them said, oh, 100. 2%, 3% said 120. So it's like, so there was that predetermined expectation. It's like, I don't want to live to be 120 if I, you know, am going to be bedridden or in a wheelchair or, you know, crippled with arthritis, and et cetera, et cetera. But we have all all of these different limitations that are in our mind, and until, you know, a third body or a third person pulls those limitations out and just puts them in front of you, oh, well, where did that come from? Because you don't know. A lot of
And
times we have those expectations. It's like, well, where did that come from?
And that's funny. So here's where I'm, out of all of my new enlightenment and all my challenges,
Sure.
I put the spin on that. It's like, I want to live until I am done accomplishing those things that I wanted to personally do, and those where I wanted to help others.
Mhm.
It's been a complete different spin of it. And I don't know how much time that's going to take. And I don't care. I just set things that I now want to do.
Mhm.
That's kind of what's, I think, driving me. And I'm trying to help encourage some of my other TBI survivors to, you know, stop thinking about that timeline and stop thinking that I want to get to where I was before. Before doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, like baby step it and think, where do you want to see yourself get to? And stop putting a timeline on it. What,
Right.
and not even what business you want to do. What do you want to do emotionally? What's your purpose? What's your passion?
Right.
It's a
Well,
completely
they're
different spin.
when they're saying I want to get back to the way I was before, well, actually, that's not possible
Right.
because you're a whole different person. So
Yeah.
how about changing the expectation to being better than you were before?
Yeah.
And that what that does is that's just like, oh, well, that's more challenging. That sets something out. All right, great. So you like that? Great. All right, now let's, as you know, Gene was saying earlier, let's define what is better than before. Okay, given today's circumstances, your current circumstances, what is better than before? And it changes the whole mindset starts to change. So it changes more into a growth mindset, an expansive mindset. Oh, I mean, I can do that. And that's the other challenge. Is like, well, again, when we start really talking to people and going deep, it's like sometimes you'll find that a person needs permission. You're not, well, I can't do that. Well, why not? And you just keep going, why not? Why not? Why not? Well, what if? Why not? And sometimes it'll come down to, and it doesn't matter how old they are. So like, well, I think my mom told me I couldn't. At some point, somebody in the past put a limitation there. And so it's a ceiling. It's like a glass ceiling. You're just like, I can't. Somebody told me, somebody in the past put this limitation there. And then when you identify that limitation, then you can shatter it. It's like,
That's really powerful. That's really powerful, because on a lot of these discussion groups with the TBI, people always say it's with you for life. It's with you for life, and that I find is the limiting factor with a lot of people. And it's like, but you guys are forgetting the brain is a wonderful thing. A lot of the doctors, neurologists, neuroscientists, they don't know everything about it.
Mhm.
Maybe it can't heal to what it was, but it can build new pathways, new neural networks. So,
Mhm.
and you need to think of that. So you're not who you were, but maybe you can be different and better. And
Exactly. And the only thing that's with you for life is really the memory of the event.
yeah,
Okay, that's not going to go away. The memory, so the memory's there, but you can change the charge that the memory has, the emotional charge. That's the key, where you can remove that charge. So now you can just look at that memory and say, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Yeah, but that doesn't affect me anymore. And then you're moving forward and such. But again, when when they say that that's with you for life, boom, somebody just put a limitation on you and such. As now you're going to keep remembering, you're going to keep remembering, you're going to keep remembering that. It's like, well, okay. But when you go back and you think about the event, really what you're thinking about and what you're really feeling is the emotional charge to that event. Okay, that's the big challenge with people with PTSD, which is this is a variation of it, and such as that they have the charge that's there and such. But when you can do this with timeline therapy, you can do this with EFT or a combination of the two, where you can remove that charge, and now you can just simply observe the event. It's like,
and I
oh,
love that conversation about the timeline therapy that we just had
mhm,
with the idea of the remote control, of pausing it
yeah,
and looking at the event. That concept, and I think it'll help a lot of people. Helps me sit and go back and look at the event for what it is, and not have that emotional attachment.
yeah, because it's not the whole event.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you go off of what we were talking about on um, on the last live stream, is when we actually think of everything is a snapshot, okay, and we are moving through snapshot after each one. So in timeline therapy, you have this block of those snapshots, and then the remote, you're going, I'm looking at this one, no big thing. I'm looking at this one, no big thing. I'm looking at this one, no big thing. Then you look at this one, there's a charge there. Like, oh, that's it. That's where that's the moment it stuck to me and such. And then you go further, it's still there, still there, still there, and now it diminishes. So it's this segment. Okay. And there's a process where you can just take this segment and just remove it. And in many cases, what that'll cause is that'll cause all of these everything that was attached to that segment to collapse. And then it goes away. So
Ross, just to understand further about the
Sure.
past present, and future.
Mhm.
Because you on before your the episode of 41, I always thought that the moment now means it's just to be fully present
Mhm.
of what you have now
Right.
and be in it and to do whatever you are and you know, and your past is the past, and then whatever you do well today, the tomorrow will become today anyway. So your tomorrow will also be good if you do good today. Yeah. So that's got a moment now. But trying to understand your timeline is that it means that we can go back to the past and live it now, and we can go to the future and live it now. Is that what you mean? Maybe you can explain a bit more to me so that I can understand better.
Okay, so when we look at the now, so we are here, and you have a stream of another time stream of the past here, and then you have another time stream of the future here. Okay, so you have all these three streams that are moving together. Okay, but we're here, we're now. Okay, and those are just kind of going by us. And at some point, you know, this is the now and this is the past, and then, you know, because of what we're doing, we intersect with this segment from the past. Okay, and then we get past it, we're back in the now, and then this segment comes back. And this is what PTSD is that this just keeps doing this and intersecting our now. And the future is similar, but the past is really the most, because the future, when the future is intersecting with our now, it's a what if future, where we talk about all the time that, you know, most people who are not really in the now, they're not really experiencing the now, because they're either living with this part of the past, or they're living with this what if of the future.
Hi
Shiba.
Hello, sorry.
That's okay. Just if you mute yourself, yeah, there you go. So when we're talking about the expectations that some of the people that you're dealing with, their expectations are on that future timeline, and their expectations are a what if. What if this happens? 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 And such. And they become expectations, and then expectations which are connected to a specific time goal. You know, by January of 2021, I should have been completely healed. Everything, I should be back to my old life. And they didn't hit that expectation. And again, this is where we're saying, well, why did you choose that date? And, you know, how are you defining completely healed? I mean, all these different variables. And this is where when we create, you know, stepping stones, this is something that we go through in the master class, is when we create these stepping stones, which are their levels of progression. Okay, so instead of saying, well, by this date, I'm going to be completely healed, and there's nothing in between to show your progression, to give you little rewards of progression, milestones per se. Because when you get to a particular area, like, well, you know, this isn't where I expected to be at this particular point. Maybe I need to reassess this final expectation. But our expectations are, like I said, they're not really defined very well, because there's, you know, it's just like, well, what did you attach this to? How did you come about this? So that's when we're living in that future time stream. Okay, there's something it's not really there yet, and then we have the past time stream, which is the event that caused us to create this expectation for the future and such. But if we still have that charge to the trauma, to that event, you're virtually not going to get here, because you get that it slips in and then pulls you back, brings you right back to the beginning. So this charge needs to go away, because it's like trying to do a 4-minute mile, but somebody's tied a rope to you. And you get to a certain point and then they yank that rope back. You get that certain point and then they yank that rope back. Okay. All the while the world's still going past you, is still transferring, going on, but it's just like, oh, my expectation was to get to do the 4-minute mile. Yeah, but you forgot to cut the rope.
Yeah.
How do you got this rope here? Because it keeps pulling you back. That past event keeps pulling you back. Okay. The past is the past is there. Okay. You just have to work on the charge, the emotional charge. So
I like the
back to
discussion
you.
of, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Sorry, go ahead.
I like the discussion on all the what ifs.
Mhm.
I find, and I was doing this, I was bad for this before, and I've found I've since let it go. It puts you in a state of, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And it always seems to be negatively charged.
Most of the time.
I know, and I'll give a little story there to kind of give it a good example there. Shortly after the whole Boston Marathon, that terrible, terrible explosion of timeline, my daughter was going away on a school-related trip, a course trip, which took them to a few cities, including New York. And my sister kept saying, well, what if there's a terrorist attack? What if this happens? What if that happens? I said, and what if my daughter has the time of her life? What if she makes friendships to last a lifetime? What if she's discovered by a talent agency? What if she discovers her passion in life? And it really helped me. And I try to do this with a lot of my friends, encourage them to think about endless possibilities and not getting stuck down that negative path.
Mhm.
I really love that discussion about the timeline and trying to be open to the possibilities.
Right. A lot of times you'll come across somebody who you do that. I say, well, what about, well, wonder if it worked out really, really good. They go, yeah, but, and you're like, oh, okay. Now this, when they will, when they'll just kind of let go of every single thing that you say, is like, yeah, but no. It says now what you're running into is a belief system more than anything else. Okay, it's not just a random, well, I just don't believe that. It's a belief system, because if you take away that belief system from them and such, there is so much more attached to it. And that those are the challenging times. Well, who put this idea in your head? And that's not a casual conversation. That's like, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee sometime, and let's chat about this, and so that you can dig deep and find find that piece, or find that memory of theirs that put all those limitations there, because those limitations are pretty much connected to virtually everything. It's like, who gave you those limitations? Where did they come from? Because a lot of times through a question and answer session, they don't know. Consciously, they don't know. And
In my example, it was my sister. We grew up together, so I know where a lot of those beliefs came from.
Mhm.
And yeah, I had to do a bit of a break away from the family for my sanity, my health, and my daughter's too, because I wanted to break those old patterns.
Right.
So powerful conversation. I really appreciate it, Russ.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. It's one of those things where, I don't want to say that these are all simple answers. They're very complicated when we really start delving into it. And there was a live stream I think we did a few weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, and where I was talking about a relationship that I had, years and years and years and years ago. And I'd done all my processes, and pretty much was done with the whole thing. And I was driving. It was the day before we did the live stream, so it was kind of fresh in my memory. And I'm driving, and a particular song came on my and all of a sudden I just had this overwhelming feeling, and I'm just like, what the hell? and and the point of that event was, or me talking about it at the time, was that, listen, I said, this is what I do for a living, and I thought I had taken care of this and such, but still there are these subtle little triggers. And this, at this particular point, this song was there. And so I got home and I just went straight to my office and just kind of shut myself in so that I could focus on this. And I'm like, okay, let me think about this. And then I just kind of followed all the breadcrumbs backwards. And I'm like, oh, I remember this. I need to make this go away. And so I took the charge away from that particular song, because it was just linked to that event. And I hadn't heard the song for I don't know how long. And so sometimes, we think all is good, and all is good, but it's just there. It's just like, oh, holy cow, what the hell? And and then we see it, we recognize it, and then we respond to it.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's these are things that when we're not so wound up in all of the stuff, okay, and we've gotten most of it out in the open, or out of our system, then when these little things pop up like this, you become more aware of them. They're not overbearing because they're not compounded by everything else. And you can kind of go, oh, I observe this happening. Okay. I'm looking at it deeper, and now I'm going to respond to it. And my response is going to be an action. I'm going to remove this, or choose to keep it. This works both ways. So we've used, in the past, we've used a lot of those days you're driving down the road and a song comes on, and all of a sudden your whole thought process just changes. And all of a sudden you're thinking about prom night, from, 30 years ago. And you just, why am I thinking of prom night? But you're kind of like, oh, well, all right, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. But you're like, well, why was I thinking about that? What was going on in my environment? These don't random just pop into your head. They're triggered by something. It's like, oh, I was doing that. Oh, that song came. I remember that song. Yeah, that's what it is. And this really good, happy feeling comes on. So it works both ways, and this is what Gary was saying earlier, is this is kind of the, this is the backbone to the process that he and I developed, is where using those environmental triggers to work in your favor, when in many cases those environmental triggers are working against you. So it's like, no, I think I want that. I'm going to hang on to that. I choose to hang on to that because I like the feeling it gave me. Okay, it brought back a good memory. That's great. That's why music is so powerful. So I'm going to use that. Well, then this is what kind of popped into both of our heads, from coming from different directions. It's like, well, why can't we take this and now redirect this to empower us for this? And Jean's been through the program, so she's tracking with me. It's just like, it's really, really powerful. So now I'm going to set up a sequence that is just going to constantly be triggering me to be empowered and such. And what it does is that it becomes, as you're using it more and more, it starts to supersede all of the other ones, because the subconscious mind now is being retrained, and it likes it. It's like, I like feeling like this. I like this a lot better than this other stuff. Even though this other stuff is what I'm used to, I'm liking this better. And so then it just starts to kind of evolve, and it evolves on its own based on what the subconscious mind wants to happen as well. And we just kind of tweak it a little bit. You just kind of keep tweaking it towards like, yeah, now it's going to go like this. And then the expansion just begins. That's us in a nutshell.
That's very good, Ross.
Thank you.
It's very good.
Love it. Thank you.
It's
Mhm.
helped me a lot.
You know, so your environment, the people around you, you know, they, again, they can empower you, or they can bring you down or pull you down. The past can empower you, or it can pull you down, or at least cause you to be stagnant. It's that rope that keeps pulling you back, and there's no more slack in it. So you don't want the rope, you just want to cut it. Okay. You can't.
May I ask something?
Sure.
When family members moving you are down, so what to do?
Well, so Shiva, you and I went through that. That is the same process that I took you through a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Okay.
Where when it comes to family members, it's a little more challenging.
Yeah.
Because they're always there, and there comes a
Yeah.
point where you have to have a conversation with them,
Yeah.
and just, you know, and you're just like, you know what, when you say this and when you do this, this is how it makes me feel.
Mm.
Some brutal honesty. You don't, you know, you don't want it, you want it to be a conversation, not an argument. Not, you don't want it to be a challenge of sorts. It's just a conversation. It's just like, listen, I'm just letting you know how that makes me feel. Because in many cases, they're unaware of that.
Yeah.
And in other cases, they are aware of that, and that's actually what they're trying to do.
Mm.
Okay. But you have to, people are not going to change if they don't know that they need to change. Okay. So by having that conversation, then if you have a family member that is causing these types of issues for you, but they're
Yeah.
aware of it, now it becomes a choice of theirs.
Yeah.
See the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. They're not just saying it being kind of ignorant of the fact that this is bothering you. Like, oh, I know this bothers you. Now it's a choice. And then that is followed up with another conversation.
Ross, can I add in something?
Sure. Please.
Yeah. Let's say, for example, I hope Shiva, you don't mind. I'm just, sharing some
No,
views.
no, I'm not. No, it's okay.
Right. So let's say, for example, if the family member is a situation, and
Yeah.
you come to realize and grow up within yourself, and you realize many things, and sometimes you can't change what other people think, even though
Yeah.
you're trying to make the conversation. And when you make the more conversation, it becomes even more entangled. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to say that, you should be bigger than who you are. Let go and understand them, knowing that they can't change, but it's okay. They are what they are. I'm bigger than what I am. I love them as my family.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean I should love them less. Do not disentangle yourself away just because they can't understand you. And
Correct.
if you can understand yourself better, you rise up and say that now I am younger, I am better, I have come to realize things they have not. I try to talk to them, but they are not going to change. Don't get pulled by them, or you pull them and then it becomes a fight. Let go, understand them, be with them, still love them, but you rise above and don't argue over it.
Mhm.
Don't talk about that kind of situation. Be aware of it because it's there, but let go. Let go in the sense that the other time, Ross, when we talk about forgiveness, you see, when we are in the situation, we also are part of that situation. So when we are
Yeah.
in that situation, when we understand really, we must learn to forgive them, and we must forgive ourselves.
Correct.
When we are able to forgive ourselves, we can then let go easier.
Exactly. Very good.
Sometimes it's too difficult to forgive ourselves. Sometimes the guilt feeling is there.
Mm.
Very true.
You got to understand it and slowly learn to love yourself. Let the love within your heart flows. And if your heart, the love within your heart flows, it can. All of us have the same love. There's no one. Doesn't mean that a monk has more love than you. Everybody is the same, except that their level of love has grown up higher than you. So it is inside us, every one of us, and let it rise. Once you let it rise, you can let go of many things. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's very
That
good.
we-
I
Exactly.
love that input, Jean. Yeah, other people might not be in the same place to accept that discussion and to be able to move forward at that time. And maybe they need just a bit of time too. I love that input. Thanks.
Mhm. Yeah, many times when we're having these discussions with, especially with loved ones, because there's a different dynamic there. You know, if you, it's just simple physics that if you push upon something, it's going to push back.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. So
Ah.
you dispel that energy between two objects or two people, and dispel that energy by not pushing. And what Jean is saying is perfect, where you're forgiving them, you're forgiving yourself. And so you dissipate that energy. And so where when they want to push, but they're just going to like this. It's like, listen, you know what? I've watched people, friends, close friends, I've watched them just go at each other, just back and forth and back and forth for the most petty of things. And what it came down to is, one time they just kept on. I was just listening, just back and forth, and just like watching tennis games, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally I said, listen, you're both right. Because that's what the whole conversation or just spat or argument was all about, is that who was right about the most. I don't even remember what it was, now. It's like, because it was so insignificant. This is like, you're both trying to be right. You're both right. I mean, it was, I
Yeah.
would say it was something like the sky is blue. Well, it's not really blue. It's more like, no, it's blue. It's like, well, and it was so insignificant, but it's just like, stop, because sometimes we want to be right, or we don't necessarily want to be better, but we don't want someone to be better than us. It really comes back to the individual. It's like, what's their true belief? What's the core? What is causing this for them? It's like, and many times you can dispel these things by just saying, what's going on? What's up? Because I understand there seems to be some negativity. I don't think it's coming from me, but if I know that it's being directed at me, and if I'm the cause, I would like to know what it is that I'm doing so that I can better help you. Oh, I didn't realize that I was doing this. Like, okay, it's just that communication. And a lot of times we don't want to communicate in that regard. We just want to defend. We just want to push back.
100% correct.
So
Yeah.
it's taking the higher road. It's just like, you know what? Let's have a conversation. Let's get this out. Let's air this out. And you will be amazed at how little something started in that person's mind, as with our own minds and such, but time has just going back, we just keep thinking of it, and then our memory of it changes, and now we've taken something else and kind of piled it on there. We've taken something else and kind of piled it on there. We've taken something else and kind of piled it on there. And we just keep doing this toward this little tiny significant. It's like a snowball that started with
Yeah.
there's a pebble inside that snowball, and that was the original. But then we just keep piling things on over time, and it's so big that it can no longer be contained. And sometimes that conversation is just going to simply melt that snowball. Then the only thing left is actually the pebble that you really need to deal with. It's a process. It can take time. And but these conversations simply shouldn't be done in the heat of the moment while the whole thing is charged by emotion. That all has to be dispelled. And then you approach the person when everything is calmed. Hey, can we talk? Can we go have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever the case? Can we just go talk? And those conversations can be short, but they can be really, really long. Okay. But communication is, your greatest asset. But many of us don't, we have an expectation of the conversation. We live in the what ifs. I wonder if it doesn't work. Well, then you try a different approach. Yeah, but the last time I did, now we're living in the past. It's like, talk about it now. Be just very, very present in the now. What is going on? And it's just opening up, saying, well, I'm just trying to figure out, this is what I feel. And the person will say, well, that's not what I'm doing. I say, I understand that's probably not what your intention is. However, this is the end result. The end result is what I feel. And I just want to, let you know that and get, see if there's something that I can do that we can make this go away. And we can just, life is short, whether it be 80 years, 100 years, 120 years, it's still pretty short in the whole scheme of things. So let's just make the best of it. Absolutely make the best of it.
Yeah.
I have to drop off. I'm sorry, and I'm loving this
Not a
conversation.
problem. We
So
are.
I want to thank everyone.
Good night.
Julie.
Bye,
Gotta
everybody.
make sure that
Bye.
Good night, Julie.
Julie, be sure to
Julie, good day, Julie.
message Gary so that he
I
can
will.
get that information. He's very
I
good.
will. I wrote it down, so please let them know what to expect to hear from me today.
Okay,
Thank you.
good plan. Take care. Any other questions? Maria, you've been incredibly quiet today. You have your beautiful smile.
Yes, I'm a little bit tired today.
Yeah,
That's all.
well, we
But
appreciate
I'm
you.
listening and I'm learning very good about listening.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very good in listening.
Listening is the lost art.
But yes,
It really is. It's somewhat of a lost art. Listening intently, listening in the now. So
Listening in
listening
the
is
now,
the same
yes.
thing. It's this that listening. When we're listening to somebody, in many cases, we're on that timeline again, and now we're back to triggering something in the past, or we're thinking of something in the future, but we're not here now listening really.
Yes.
We're walking.
This is true.
Please tell me, Maria, how to listen. I'm not very bad listener.
Oh, that's no problem, I think. But you can ask. That's a better feedback. If you're not a good listener, you can speak more, and so you are getting the answer. That's good too.
Yeah, and when you get an answer and you don't understand the answer, ask again.
Oh,
I'm not sure I understand, or repeat it back so that you can, okay, so this is what you said, and you repeat it back. Is this correct? Am I understanding this right? Because remember, you're listening with your own filters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then you're repeating it back, and like, no, that's not what I said, or it's not what I meant. So, okay.
Because yes.
This is the process.
I'm
Process of listening, going back and forth. Like, okay, so just so I understand, is this what you mean? No. Weren't you listening to me? Well, yeah, but I'm hearing something different. So that's why I'm asking you again. Okay, it can be, again, it's a process. It's a learning process, because if the person who you're interacting with isn't used to being heard, they have difficulties too. It's like, well, are they a good communicator? Can they get what their thoughts out? Can they get them and convert them into the right words? And listening isn't just listening with your ears. Listening is listening with your eyes and looking at body language and looking at facial expressions and, There's a lot to it. When you're in the now of listening, you're like this. You're just, you know, you have the eye contact, not the starey, you know, you know, looking right at them, you know, but it's, you're having that soft, that soft connection, and you're hearing what they're saying, and you're looking at their body language. And if they're they're talking to you like this, are they
That
relaxed?
means it's close.
Are they kind of looking around and they're just, you know, they're nervous? All of that, you know, is communicating to you as well. We've all been in that situation when you're talking with somebody, and then you walk away going, you know, I didn't believe a word that person said. They were saying all the right words, but their body language was saying something different. We sense it. That's a sense that we have. So again, we're listening with all of our senses. We're seeing what they're saying. We're listening to what they're saying.
Listening is like breathing. The information is coming in the subconscious mind, and then you're going to sleep, going to bed, and then after the next day, I have a new what? New feeling, new.
Yeah, you know, that's very, very true.
But it's
Good,
different
very good.
between the
Wow.
day before.
Mhm. You know, if you're, you know, a lot of times when you're in business situations and, you know, you're listening to a person, but again, you have that feeling and such, and they want you to make a decision, you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna think about this. Because you know, what you just said, Marie, you're going, you know, it's like, I need to digest this information because it was, you know, there was something off. And it's like, yeah, let me ponder on this for, you know, 24 hours or so. And then you go home and you kind of think about it, you go to sleep on it, and then you wake up and you kind of have this, yeah, there was just that, I don't feel good about this. You know, we've all had that moment where, you know, you just say, I don't know what it is, but it's just a feeling. And that's the subconscious mind saying, I know what you're consciously seeing or hearing, but this is what is really being said, and this is what I'm really seeing. You know, it's using its own filters because it can pick up a lot more of those subtle cues, and you just like, let me, I'm just not sure about this yet. And you just don't make that decision at the time. Oh, you have to make a decision now. Yeah, then I'll let this go by. You know, but when we're dealing with, you know, on a personal basis, it's all kind of the same thing. So that when you get that feeling, it's not necessarily that the person is lying. Don't get me wrong, okay? But there's an incongruency between, you know, their physical communication and their auditory communication, and you just need to put it together. And sometimes that putting together, again, thinking about your own filter system, is asking more questions. The person who asks the most questions controls the conversation.
Oh, wow.
You're not
There are a lot of very good
Understood.
manipulating the
questions.
conversation. You're not manipulating it. You're controlling the conversation. You're listening to the answers, and then another question will kind of pop into your head, and then you say, well, then, and people like that. People want to be heard.
I love this group because there are some people they are asking and some people that are listening, and so we are a whole group about listener and speaker, and together it makes a wonderful flower. And so I love this group very much.
Thank you.
It's like a garden, different types of flowers.
Yes.
Yes.
And that variety is wonderful. And the variety is, we have people from, you know, all different cultures, and for me, it's absolutely wonderful because there's no borders.
Yeah.
Everybody here is just another human being on this little blue marble floating in space. And there's no
Yeah.
borders, there's no agendas, there's just people, wanting to connect with other people of like
To
mind,
help
of like thinking.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can help people help me. Listening to you guys is like, it's like watering the garden. It's like putting fertilizer in the garden. I mean, it's just, for me, it just helps. It helps me expand as well. And
Rose, I have a
I'm
good
speaking
news
for
for
both
you.
for Gary and myself. The rabbit hole is what we like the most, because we have this back and forth. We're not just a talking head. We like the back and forth. It's just very rewarding. It's very enriching. So we got about 2 more minutes. Any more questions?
I have to say something.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Today I have taken the One Sisters session and I apply the EFT.
Yes,
It's a very good session. Thank
Good.
you very much.
you're welcome.
I apply another sister. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Yeah.
I felt too better,
Mhm.
amazing feeling.
Continue the process that we went over, and things will just start to open up. You sound so much better as well. I can hear it in your voice.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. The last time we spoke, you were not smiling, nor were you laughing.
Yeah. Now I am smiling.
Yes, you are.
See my face? Yeah.
There you go.
Hi.
My work is done.
Wonderful to hear all of you smile. Maria, very refreshing, Maria. So it's always
Oh,
hear your laughter.
Yeah.
oh, Dean.
You have
That's
a
so
beautiful
nice, so kindly.
your laughter. Your laughter. And it's good meeting you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Okay.
Thank you, Dean.
I'm gonna let you all go. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Ross, so much for your time.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank
course.
you.
It's my pleasure. And any other questions, you can instant message myself, you can instant message Gary, or just put it on the group page and with my name on it, and it'll send me it sends me a notification. Anytime you put my name or Gary's name on when you're entering something in, it sends us a notification that somebody's asking us a question or making a comment specifically towards us. So it always helps so that we can better and get back to you as soon as possible. So that's all we have. Thank you for joining us on the rabbit hole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Have
you.
a good day, all of you.
Everybody have a great
Love
one.
you. Take care.
Our
Bye.
pleasure.
Bye. Bye,
Bye
Shiva.
bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.